Good evening, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order. We'll start with the land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge that the ground on which we live is the traditional territory of Caldwell First Nation, of the Three Fires Confederacy, and the original people of Point Pelee and Pelee Island and its surrounding lands and waters, and that of the Huron-Wendat and Wyandot peoples. We recognize and respect the First Nations who are stewards of the land and waters of Turtle Island and who have embraced this stewardship since time immemorial. We would also like to acknowledge the contributions of other nearby First Nation communities and all original people across Turtle Island. We will now have a moment of silent reflection, followed by the playing of the national anthem. Okay, we're going to start off with the adoption of the agenda, but before we do, I wanted to let you know bylaw 8777 has been deferred to a future council meeting. So the recommendation for the March 28th, 2023 regular council meeting agenda be adopted as amended. Councillor Burns, support Councillor Carrick, all in favor? That's carried. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? There being none. Adoption of minutes for the meeting held March 14th, 2023 be adopted as presented. Councillor Riccio Spagnolo, Councillor Desjardins, all in favor? That's carried as well. Mayor's comments, there are very few today. Councillor Reno is away on a conference. March 31st is the final day for LaSalle residents to buy an early bird boat ramp annual pass, and then the regular fee will be in place for everyone as of April 1st. It is the last week to provide comments about our Howard Bouffard master drainage study, and if you have comments, please visit our website for more information. Check out our website as well for the hours of operation for the Vollmer Complex and the LaSalle Civic Center over the Easter weekend, which is April 7th through 10th. And finally, our yard waste collection starts on April 15th, and you can find the collection dates in the 2023 collection calendar. That's all I've got today. We have no presentations and delegations, public meetings, hearings, so we'll move over to H, reports and correspondence for council's action, and the first one is the development charges interest policy update. And that, I'm sure, Mr. Longwell.
Your worship, members of council. So in 2020, Bill 108 took effect, which requires municipalities to accept installment payments on development charges for rental housing, institutional development, and nonprofit housing. And at the time, with those installment payments, we're able to charge interest. So we set the rate at 5% at that point in time. Now, just as part of Bill 23, there's a maximum interest rate that we're allowed to charge, which is prime plus 1%. So we're just updating the policy to change the interest rate from 5% to prime plus 1%. And actually that's resulting in a higher interest rate at this point in time. But currently we aren't collecting interest on, there is no installments at this point in time.
Thank you very much. Members of council, any questions or comments? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Dale. Just procedurally, so when prime changes, the rate will automatically change just like everything else does. You will not have to come back to us to announce anything of that nature. I just wanted to make sure that I understood that procedurally, sir.
That's correct.
Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Any other questions? There being none, there is a recommendation before you. Moved Councillor Desjardins, support Councillor Burns. All in favor? And that carries as well. Item 2, third-party review services for the Natural Heritage expertise. And that goes to Ms. Beggs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. This report looks at potentially outsourcing natural heritage review as part of new development applications. So the town of LaSalle really prides itself on the preservation of its natural heritage features and the natural environment. And we really worked hard over the course of many decades to preserve and protect our natural environment. The natural environment and its preservation and enhancement has really become a bit of a cornerstone in terms of what it means to live in the community and in the town of LaSalle. And so under the PPS, which is the provincial policy statement, which is triggered by any Planning Act application. So any Planning Act application that comes forward through our office needs to be consistent with the PPS, the goals and the policies outlined within the PPS. And we have a duty and an obligation to make sure that any development proposal or application is in keeping with not only the PPS as a whole, but specifically the natural heritage policies outlined as part of section 2.1 in the PPS. And what this means for new development applications is that insofar as a development proposal is either adjacent to or within an area that's near a natural environment feature, the development proposal has to demonstrate no negative impact on that feature. So the proposal that's coming forward has to demonstrate that it will not adversely impact the feature through its development. So, and how the proponent does that typically is they conduct an environmental impact assessment, also known as an EIA. And this report needs to be prepared by a qualified expert, and it is used as one of the reports to substantiate the development proposal. And that's part and parcel of what we look for new development applications in terms of deeming the application complete. So that's all part of the package that comes forward as a new development application when a development proposal is adjacent to a natural heritage feature. So traditionally, these reports have been reviewed by the Conservation Authority. The Conservation Authority has all the in-house capabilities and expertise on staff. They have natural heritage planning experts on staff to be able to ascertain whether or not this EIA document is in keeping with provincial policy, is in keeping with county OP policy, and is in keeping with the Town of LaSalle official plan. So we would look to the Conservation Authority to essentially decide for us that this application and this proposal will not adversely impact the natural heritage feature, and to demonstrate that what is being qualified in the EIA is sound planning. And so as part of Bill 23, unfortunately, we're no longer able to rely on the Conservation Authority to provide that expertise and advice to the municipalities. So Bill 23, the amendments as part of Bill 23 amended the Planning Act so that the amended the Conservation Authorities Act so that conservation authorities were restricted from providing comment on Planning Act applications unless the comment had dealt with natural hazards and flooding. So essentially it restricts and limits conservation authorities' ability to comment on natural heritage aspects as part of a development proposal. So this leaves the onus on the individual municipalities to be able to determine if the proposal and the EIA report that's submitted as part of the proposal represents sound planning and is in keeping with the provincial policy statement, the County of Essex official plan, and the Town of LaSalle official plan. And so in the absence of these expertise from the Conservation Authority, what administration is proposing tonight is that we retain the experts of a qualified consultant, LGL Limited, to provide this assistance and direction that IRCA was previously providing to the municipality. And so we will be looking, provided that council agrees with this recommendation, we will be looking for LGL to help us with with EIA triggers. So when an EIA report is required as part of a development application, we will be looking for LGL to provide us with the expertise for the scoping of that report as well as reviewing the report when it's received until the report is deemed complete and acceptable in that it demonstrates no negative impact on the environment. So we chose LGL for a number of reasons. The first reason being that they typically don't represent many of the private development community in the town of LaSalle, so there's no perceived conflict of interest there. They also have a number of qualified staff who can provide advice as it relates to terrestrial ecology, wildlife issues, aquatic biologists, botanists, as well as environmental planners. So they have quite the portfolio of natural heritage expertise to be able to inform that EIA exercise that we're looking for. And should council approve this request, again, we're looking for LGL to help with appropriate triggers, terms of reference on the EIA side, and the review and commentary on the actual study itself. So what we're proposing is that the cost of the third-party review and assessment be funded entirely by the individual proponent. And so what we would be looking for as part of a complete application from the proponent is a deposit or a retainer that we would keep and use to fund this exercise and pay the invoices that we receive from LGL to cover those costs of that third-party review exercise. And we will be provided that council agrees with this approach, we would disclose this to the proponent and the developer at the time of pre-consultation to let them know that this is the avenue that we're going down, because we're no longer able to rely on the expertise from the Conservation Authority, that we're going to be asking for this deposit and this retainer so we can cover the costs of the third-party review, and so that the report and the development application can be adequately assessed. So at this time, we're looking for the report to be received by council and for council to authorize administration to retain LGL Limited on behalf of the town for the purposes of natural heritage review for new development applications. And with that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carrick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, Ms. Biggs. I guess timing-wise, would there be any difference from what we deal with now as opposed to dealing with LGL?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, or thank you, Councillor Carrick, through you, Madam Mayor. So it's a good question. We did ask as part of the as part of the proposal from LGL to incorporate some timeline expectations that we can anticipate. And they've incorporated different timeline expectations relative to the task at hand. So for example, if we're looking for them to do a scoping exercise, they've incorporated an anticipated timeline for completion on that. I would suggest that they do have dedicated staff that will be working to service our municipality. The Conservation Authority had one individual who had the natural heritage expertise who was required to provide advice to all the neighboring municipalities in the county. So we're hopeful that the timeline can be expedited from what you're used to.
Thank you. So further to that, I don't see, is there like an exit clause for us? How long do we use them for? Is it a case-by-case basis? How does that work? I don't see that there anywhere. Did I miss it?
No, through you, Madam Mayor. So I believe the rates that they're proposing are good until 2024. But we'll probably reevaluate on an annual basis just to make sure that this proposal and this arrangement is working for both the town and the consultant. And we can't really make it super specific because it's really going to differ application by application, right? What we can anticipate we'll need from them will vary depending on the nature of the proposal that's coming forward.
Councillor Burns?
Through you, Your Worship, isn't this really double dipping? The developer's gonna have to have his or her consultant, and they're gonna pay for that, and then on top of that, we're gonna bill them as well.
Yeah.
So how are we at arm's length to make sure, even though we have our own, that they really act on our behalf, because it's no secret who the developer's gonna be. So I just don't know. With IRCA, they were a completely separate entity, but these people are for hire. I have some concerns that way about. In other words, if the EEA costs a developer $10,000 or $15,000 and we charge them the same 15, we're really charging them $30,000 for this to get a second opinion.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So the rationale behind it, I think, and I see it very similar to, perhaps other municipalities do with their engineering review. So they outsource different engineering companies to provide oversight on engineering drawings or engineering reports that come forward, and then they bill back the developer, right? We don't do that in-house today, but that is something that we potentially will be exploring. The other thing to consider is that engineers and planners are bound by an association, right? So they're bound by a code of ethics. They're held accountable to a code of ethics and association. Biologists don't have that same sort of prescriptive binding. So there's no oversight. They're not accountable to a code of conduct or a code of ethics. So this provides that additional level of oversight on the municipality's behalf.
Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I understand that this is Bill 23 that's got us to this point. Can you explain to me, if we didn't do this, what would happen with our going forward in the town of LaSalle?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So if we didn't do this, we wouldn't be able to satisfy Section 2.1 of the PPS. So we have to make sure we have a duty and a responsibility to adequately address the natural heritage policies within the provincial policy statement. And in the absence of the expertise to be able to do that in a comprehensive, robust manner, we wouldn't be able, I certainly don't have those expertise, and we don't have those expertise on staff at the moment. So the proposal is for a way to retain those expertise at arm's length while still satisfying and addressing Section 2.1 of the PPS.
Thank you, and a supplemental, Your Worship. And to Mr. Burns's point, because they are a company, they could choose to work anywhere else after working here. Do we have any, and it might not be you, it might be to our legal counsel, is there any way that we can safeguard our intellectual property so that they don't, at the end of 2024, as Mr. Burns has said, get a better offer from Joe's Developing and go work for Joe exclusively in the town of LaSalle? Or is that beyond the scope of something that we're able to do with an entity that we enter into a contractual agreement with?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm sure Dominic can perhaps speak to the legal ramifications, but I don't see why we couldn't request that information be kept confidential. We have a good working relationship with the proponent that we're looking to secure this advice from. They have also assured us that as part of this, should council decide that this is appropriate, they will no longer take on any additional private sector clients in the municipality, in our municipality, because that would put them in a conflict of interest, right? So we have that trust in that respect with the relationship that we have with the consultant.
Go ahead.
Through your worship, just to add to that, yes, I think we could build in some language in terms of information-specific things that would be exclusive to the town of LaSalle, but I mean, there'd also be just some general attributes, I suppose, that would come up in different environmental regions within LaSalle that wouldn't be, you know, proprietary in that sense, but we would have to work that out probably on a case-by-case basis and through the language of the contract, but I'm sure we could at least put some sort of mechanism in there, yes.
Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Go ahead.
Again, maybe just to summarize into Councillor Burns's question, what we're really looking for is for someone to step into IRCA's shoes. That's really what we're trying to do here. We obviously don't have that, although, you know, again, I'm sure that Joe's development company is a very reputable development company, but nonetheless, we don't have that, the expertise in-house to deal with some of those concerns that are raised by the current provincial policy statement and requirements of the provincial policy statement. And until that is changed, and I don't know whether that will be changed or not, but until that is changed, we still have an obligation. And albeit, you know, our preference is to have a third, you know, an independent third body government organization do that, like IRCA. As much as we might have had some challenges with timelines and things of that nature in the past, they were a completely unbiased body. And so we're looking for someone to step into that role, which is somewhat problematic because we're hiring a consultant that has other clients as well. This particular consultant is going to avoid having clients in LaSalle, and which gives us some comfort. But that being said, again, there is no perfect step in for IRCA. And so this is the best that we come up with at this point in time. We will be reviewing it on an annual basis, as I expect that the legislation may be changing as it has been recently changed and it gets implemented. So we will be reviewing on an annual basis to ensure that, again, the agreement is still valid and makes sense for us.
Any other questions? No, that's exactly my comments were, I know when Bill 23 came upon us, that was our biggest concern, was we don't have a biologist on staff. IRCA was extremely important to that, and I think your report said, what, 16.35% of LaSalle is something to be concerned about and something that we have to make sure we protect. So you answered my original question, which was if they were in a conflict of interest, what would happen? But the fact that they've kind of assured us that that won't happen, that's comforting, but like Deputy Mayor said, some sort of a confidential agreement in there may be helpful to us as well to protect us. My only question would be, under Bill 23, are we allowed to collect a fee for this? Because I know there's so many rules and changes. Is that part of it?
I don't believe that there's anything that would preclude us from collecting a fee. I don't see how, you know, we would be expected to subsidize it without having collected a fee. From what I've seen in other areas and municipalities, this is not uncommon. And I think we're a bit ahead of the game in terms of moving forward with this approach, but it's something that our neighboring municipalities and partners are going to be exploring as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for getting ahead of it, because I'm sure LGL can only take on so many clients. So hopefully that puts us in a good position. Members of council, what's your pleasure on this report? Councillor Desjardins? Okay, support. Councillor Carrick, all in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Item 3, the 2023 and 2024 LaSalle Strawberry Festival items. Ms. Finero.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. The purpose of this report is to advise council of the location of the 2023 and 2024 Strawberry Festival. Due to the ongoing construction at the waterfront, it will continue to be hosted at the Vollmer Complex. We're seeking approval for the necessary road closures for the festival in 2023 and 2024, and again, seeking approval to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement with Robertson Amusements for the 2023 and 2024 festival. And I'm available should there be any questions.
Thank you. Members of council, any questions? Councillor Carrick.
Sorry, Your Worship. So just to be sure that 2023 we commit to that, after that, we are still looking to go to the waterfront. Is that my understanding? So that we're not throwing that away, we're going to move down the road there, and that is our end goal, right?
At this point, the direction from council is to bring it back to the waterfront when it's appropriate to do that. So unless we hear otherwise, that is our goal going forward.
Okay, thank you.
And I think it's my understanding that we're still a few years away from that events lawn being completed to be able to move the festival back there safely. Any other questions, concerns, comments? Nothing? Recommendations in front of you? Councilor Riccio Spagnolo, support Councilor Carrick, all in favor? And that carries as well. Item 4, renaming Matchett Road to Matchett Road. Ms. Beggs, is this yours, or does anybody go? Okay.
Thank you, members of council. Again, the report's before you. It is in response to a council question. We have reviewed the information from the previous position of council, as well as the information that has come to light since that time. Two of the issues that were identified when previous councils had dealt with this was, the first was that obviously Matchett Road being a continuous road in the town of LaSalle and the city of Windsor, having an inconsistent naming could cause some confusion, as well as looking at potentially what the Canada Post situation might be. Though both those issues have seemed to be resolved, there does not seem to be an issue with Canada Post in terms of delivering of mail to the area residents. As well, the City of Windsor has just recently made the move to rename the road Matchett minus the E. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. But certainly from that perspective, again, the report's before you with the recommendation to move forward. We don't believe that this is going to have a significant financial impact, and in checking with our legal folks, and certainly Mr. Dedault can chime in, but we don't believe that they'll have any legal ramifications with respect to the naming. So from that, if there's any questions of members of council, we'd be pleased to answer.
Thank you very much. Members of council. Councilor DeJarle.
Thank you, through you to Dominic. Dominic, can you maybe just outline what changes are going to be required for people? I've had several people asking about their coding some cost from somewhere, I have no idea where it came from, about having to change all their identification, their deeds, their driver's licenses, and blah, blah, blah. And they're concerned as well about deliveries that are going to have to be made, whether that's going to cause a problem. If you could maybe just cover off some of the things that you've run into, please. Thank you.
Sure thing. Thank you for the question. In terms of dealing with, I'll start with, I guess, deeds and property matters. From a legal perspective, the naming of the road or an address doesn't have significant bearing. What matters is what the lot numbers are on the registered plan that's underneath. So that's what we use, that's what we transfer. Every property has a certain identification number that has a legal description, and that has nothing to do with the address. So in terms of affecting their deeds, no updates are going to be required there. So that's a non-issue from my perspective. I think you mentioned wills as well. Again, my previous life, I did plenty of wills. A specific home address is not required to properly identify you, so there's no expenses that will be incurred there. In terms of identification and whatnot, I would imagine that as residents have to update, say, your driver's license or your health card, they can simply do that upon renewal. I don't think that's going to impact them one way or the other. And then in terms of the Canada Post mail delivery, I believe, I'm not sure who reached out, but I believe somebody from administration reached out and they confirmed that that won't be an issue. So from a legal impact standpoint and future expenses, I don't believe that this should add anything to the residents along Matchett Road.
Okay, thank you. Did we, I know years back, we had input from residents. When we brought this forward this time around, did we reach out to residents to have them send in questions, ask questions, just to advise them that we're moving forward with it?
Perhaps I can answer that. We did not. Again, the issues that were brought forward were not necessarily from the previous position of council. Were not dealing with individuals' residents' concerns. It was more dealing with delivery and inconsistent naming. So we never went back to residents in terms of looking at whether or not we wanted to poll residents as to what their opinion might be.
Any other questions? Councilor Riccio Spagnolo.
Thank you. Through you, I believe maybe to either Mr. Malicia or Dominic. So is there any financial impact to our residents or for the town for this change?
If I read the report correctly, I think the financial impact for the town is the cost of the signage change. In terms of the residents, again, I believe that you could update that upon your usual renewals of your, say, driver's license or health card and that sort of thing. So I don't think it's any additional expense that anyone should incur.
Okay. Councillor Carrick, anything else?
Just a quick question, or not a quick question, just a quick comment. So Windsor's already done this, and what we've all received in the past is not applicable at this point. So I see no reason why we don't move this forward and support the recommendation. So I'll move it.
Okay, moved by Councillor Carrick, support by Councillor Riccio Spagnolo. And just to comment myself, it is something we have dealt with on and off for a very long time, and it's something that should be corrected to show history the way it was. And we're finally able to correct something, and thankfully the City of Windsor has done that as well, so it will be continuous correct spelling of the road. So with that, I will call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Item I, information items to be received. There are 4 items there. Does anyone want to pull anything specific out to discuss? No, there being none, if I can get a motion to receive all 4 items. Moved by Deputy Mayor, support by Councillor Desjardins. All in favor? And that carries as well. All right. Bylaws, we have 3, 8778, 8779, and 8780 for this evening. So if I can get someone to move a first, second, and third reading and finally passed. Councillor Carrick and Councillor Burns, all in favor? And that carries. Item K, committee matters. No committee matters to discuss tonight? Questions and statements by council members? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is through you to the Finance Department. I realize that by sitting with us today, you missed the announcement of the budget. I would hope that, like we've always done, that a document short to the point form could be done to let us know how you perceive the budget's impacts to the town's bottom line. Comments, sir?
Absolutely, I can do that for you. I know the provincial budget was also released recently, so we'll take a close look at both and summarize them for you.
Thank you very much. Do we need a motion, Your Worship? If it's appropriate, I'd make a motion that the Finance Department analyze both the provincial and the federal budgets to explain to the municipality the impacts that they perceive the budgets may have on the municipality.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Burns? All in favor? That carries as well. Any other questions or statements by council members? Nope. Notices of motion. Closed session, we did not have one, so on to our confirmatory bylaw. Bylaw 8781 be given a first, second, and third reading and finally passed this evening. Councillor Desjardins and Deputy Mayor, all in favor? That carries. We have a schedule of meetings available, and otherwise, I believe that's it for this evening. Okay. All right, thank you for coming this evening, and thank you for tuning in through YouTube. And do you want a motion to adjourn? We're good. We've adjourned. Thank you and have a good night.